Beautiful morning and a beautiful morning to you. Um, Working on game design stuff. Yeah, working on our concepts and ideas for different game projects at different potential levels of development, from completely independent and what you can do solo to the first steps of collaboration and development, showcasing our ideas and how you prove them to be effective in the simplest ways possible, and then the layers of expansion up to our highest possible tier of development. So from entirely independent, but yet produced, even on an independent game budget, you need the time and the energy and the team to make that happen. But if you're able to prove that your ideas are successful enough, that they have an audience, and that they have enough interesting ideas that you can capture, either first in concept and then with art and presentation and then with a gameplay demo, the most basic building block elements of the game working. Yeah, if it was successful and popular enough at that stage, you could potentially fund triple A all the way into triple S tier budget, which is what I call a game with a really high budget, like something double or triple what would be like a mainstream triple A budget for games. Because obviously there is no upwards cap. There might be some degree of an upwards cap of okay, you need teams that can work effectively together. You can't hire 400 people onto a project unless you delegated it extremely well into different pieces that fit together perfectly, so that there wasn't a whole bunch of wasted time, energy, or oh, that doesn't fit together, right? You want to have the blueprint and the plan, like, really well defined with what exactly you do with your investment, and to meet with people that have all the areas of expertise that extend, to the most, you know, tiny detail and minutia of game design and development. Make sure it's up to date. And make sure, you spend a little bit of time seeing if there are new innovations in the field that could accelerate that development, or, add things to it that we haven't seen before. Not just up to date, but even forwards looking. So thinking about those things, and with those things, you consider every aspect of game design and production and what you can do to get funding, examples of different people that have done interesting things in production, in getting funding, in cool ideas for games, for art styles for games, new mechanics, classic mechanics done in new ways. All these things I love about game design. You learn all those things, and then you kind of let it fall to the back of your mind. You open up all those books, and you engage yourself enough with it that you can let it fall back to the subconscious level, and just focus on what is an idea for a story, a mechanic, a game that doesn't exist yet, that captures your imagination, that captures your emotion. What are some of your favorite games of all time? And why and how were they so impactful and influential? It's fun to look at the past as well, because I still have those recollections of how amazing were some games like Kingdom Hearts 2 and Devil May Cry 3 back in 2005. Yeah, the sequels to two of my favorite games of all time, Devil May Cry and Kingdom Hearts. I never played Devil May Cry 2 until much later. That's okay. It missed the mark. But Devil May Cry 3 is an absolutely stellar example of someone taking constructive criticism and using it in a constructive way. Yeah. It was made by the same team and the same director as Devil May Cry 2. And they went through and they fielded all of the criticisms, and of which there were many, and channeled that with their love of Devil May Cry and wanting to make an awesome game, and made one of the greatest comebacks in video game history. Awesome. I still remember how Devil May Cry 3 and Kingdom Hearts 2 felt. I bring up those two examples specifically in part because they are sequels. They are a remix. They took something that I was already familiar with and they expanded on it and took it in new directions, just with absolute finesse. And I love how that's different for each person. Like, if you missed some classics, you hit some classics right on the money. It helps to, Garen, what are your, you know, where's your personality and imagination at? You can always gain any degree of expertise, any amount of knowledge. With enough time, you can gain any skills out there, but who you are and what were your formative experiences, what shaped you, and never get discouraged by this, right? Because you might be like, oh man, my formative experiences suck. There's a lot of trauma and trial and struggle, and it's okay. Even really challenging formative experiences can be really valuable when you find the flip side of them. When you find on the other side of that trial, was there some overcoming, some accomplishment? Was there some gaining of internal strength, right? Any trial out there, there's EXP on the other side of it. What was the experience gain? For every problem, it gives rise to a solution. Even if we can't find it yet, it starts the search for the solution, right? To actively have a problem in your space creates the desire for the solution, which even desire for a solution is a really valuable thing. That's motivation, that's drive that you can use to channel into real world solutions. And solutions specifically personal to you, right? Like, it's always good to be part of a solution. If you can be part of a solution to a problem that was actively a part of your life, that's some massively satisfying shit right there. Okay. So going in and, dream for you, have your own dreams, even while you're engaging with like the puzzle of what would be a game that's going to be successful, doable, new yet well defined and understood enough that you can communicate the whole vision for the game to a team and to an audience until you're Kojima, and you can fund your own projects and have enough credibility that people follow you down any road. But while we're getting started, and if you are getting started, even maybe if you've been established, you want things that people can understand, and even to try and capture that in the elevator pitch, to make projects that people can understand quickly. What are the selling points? What are the hooks? What's the entertainment value? What's the twist that gives it all a new light? What captures all those things? Very, very fun. Very fun to get back into that. It's such a big part of my creative history of my life, but specifically in the creative arts. When I was drawing things, I was thinking of stories. When I wasn't drawing, just running around outside and imagining ideas for stories. Half of the time they were like game ideas. The other half of the time they were pretty similar to game ideas. They could have been adapted to a game. Were most of the stories that I thought of. And then, in time, I also write for anime, write for comics, or even just for a scene for a short film or a music video. If there's an idea for a film that's really interesting to me, sometimes I would sit and just consider for a while what's like two projects that could come together in a new way, or what's a remix that could be done. Like, there's a really cool hook or a dynamic in a story. I remember watching City of Lost Children. Weird ass, I think it's a French film. Might not be a French film, just a low budget art film from a long time ago with Ron Perlman. And just the way they shot up, the way they set up the shots and introduced the story and explained it visually, and like a mystery, and it's kind of haunting and weirdly enchanting as well. And I like a haunting yet enchanting vibe. There's so many ideas for stories related to that, with a different art style, with a different, turn and direction. I had the opportunity to play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and even more Dungeons and Dragons than I played. I read the rule books and the guidebooks, and like the idea in the Dungeon Master's manual where they set up how you can create your own adventures and how you can use some adventures that you have already seen, but then you change up aspects. You change up aspects and you make it collaborative. You always leave space for the player's involvement. You don't create the whole thing, but you create a framework, a scaffolding. You create the space with the direction and the momentum to create the adventure. And that's awesome in two ways, because you're imagining collaborators that make the story and the adventure with you. If you're making for games, obviously you're always going to have a player. But if you're making films, games, animation, even comics, working with a small team of assistants, you're going to be working with partners. You're going to set up openings for your other writers, your concept artists, your designers, your engineers, for them to expand upon it, for them to, you create a sick opening for a scene in this key spot, right? Where there's a lot of arrows pointing to it and there's a confrontation. It's fun sometimes not to write that part. You'll always be like tempted to what's the best you can do there. And sometimes I will write that part, but if I'm trying to make it collaborative, I'll unwrite it. With just the idea that, you give them responsibility and encouragement, but also like you trust and believe in them. Like for someone to do their best, I feel like you have to believe in them, right? Like not just to, like they're key core members. They create the world and the story with you, and together you make something that's way more awesome than you ever could alone. So investing in Dungeons and Dragons is awesome, and in the way that it is this shared meta mythology of all of these different adventurers and dreamers, these writers, schemers, that come up with traps and twists and turns and, plot points. And in a lot of ways, they've combined together a whole bunch of different novels. It comes from The Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's breathtaking world building. But then the Tolkien mythology is expanded in the Forgotten Realms series so far. And there's so many writers that take their own spin at this fantasy, world, that it adds in a lot of other things. There's so many diverse types of creativity. There's so many diverse personalities that move through the Forgotten Realms. So it kind of like creates this one shared giant place, which is kind of like a metaphor, I think, for game design. If you put together all of the different trends and the features, you learn about and research all the games on the field, you start to get this meta mythology, and to have something that is complementary yet different. It does things that are shared and similar and yet deviates, diverges at points. It's a great it's a great challenge. Yeah, a challenge and kind of like a puzzle to try and find something that fits all of those pieces together. In a lot of ways, I feel like it's something I rarely could figure that out if I'm just sitting at my desk. But if you spend enough time thinking about it, thinking about it and considering it and looking at different pieces of game design, different examples of breakthrough or innovative games that are doing something new, that are spinning a classic thing in a new way, that takes this concept and runs with it with the right direction, like Persona 5 or The Witcher 3. Just examples of like hitting the whole way through. Like ahead, like they jump up in what is expected in their respective genres and run with it throughout a whole, 60 to 150-hour game time that has all of these branching paths that creates a priceless and unforgettable gameplay experience, and did so for an entire um, landscape of gamers and game critics everywhere. Amazing cohesion of all of the elements of those projects. When you get everything right, it's not just like one hit, because games are massive. It becomes one collection of stories, one collection of music, and a collection of emotions. And there's an addictive series of patterns, and like, where's the action, where's the satisfyingness of finding the next treasure, leveling up and collecting the next persona, strengthening your bonds. Everything that you do within those games creates a feedback loop, and that feedback loop does become a place where you explore art and stories, characters, ideas, scenarios. So you're creating the idea for a game, but that could become a whole landscape of design with a whole bunch of different stories, art, music, like a vast collaboration of ideas that creates a unique world. Kojima was credited as saying he thought of the art of game making like that of curating a museum, because there's so many different types of things, and you organize them within a perfect sequence, so all these different aspects of design in like game mechanics that fit together perfectly, of art, of music, of movie moments, of story. There's all these different pieces of design, and you must curate them into a perfect sequence that takes you on this journey. So yeah, you're assembling everyone that's going to make everything that's going to be in your museum and creating the experience of it. And that's something that's fun to think of when you're dreaming of new ideas for games, of creating a placeholder in your mind for what that collaboration could be. Obviously, you can't think of what the music is going to be, but you can have an idea of it. You can think of how that music would make you feel, or that art, or those stories. Like, even if you don't know exactly what they're going to be, to imagine exciting, badass, crazy stories within this awesome framework, this world that already you love, is quite exciting. And that's quite exciting to imagine the shape that collaboration could take. And I feel like that's something that's positive. I mean, that is the shape that it'll take working in games and game design, is this this curation of this massive collaboration, all these different art forms, all these different moving pieces fitting together, to imagine it fitting together seamlessly. Yeah, like, what an amazing new RPG be like, something like The Last Guardian, or Ico, or Shadows of Colossus, but like sweeping and grand and fun, like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, with like sweeping or fun like Breath of the Wild, expansive like Breath of the Wild, but then sweeping like Final Fantasy or Xenoblade Saga, something like that, with the music of like Nier, but different than all of those Nier plus tribal things, and that being the starting point. And then you throw in some different mythology, world mythology, and then you remix that as well. You're not just taking a piece of world mythology and culture, but you're using all of that as a starting point. And then you imagine a story of a character with a hook, something dynamic that ties them into this quest. Like, who's going to be the main character? Why are they going to be the main character? The main character creates the window into this world that takes the players on this journey. And then imagining the players' reactions and interactions with the world. Like, maybe the plot lines and the quests, a lot of them have multiple directions they can go. All of which are kind of in character and could happen within this world. So you're not just creating one way that things could go. And this is how Dungeons and Dragons is scripted. All of this scenario that you write is open-ended. All this scenario could go any different number of ways, and getting to see what the players will do and being unsure of which direction it's going to go yourself as a creator, it's quite exciting. It's very exciting. And that's been something that's been breathing life into my creative space recently. It's been really fun to take a art videos and design again. I've got a whole bunch more on it as well. I went back through and reviewed a lot of arts instruction, the Proco series, and Peter Hahn especially. Peter Hahn is an amazing, magical individual. I love the way that he speaks and articulates design. It's so concise and on point. Very cool, very cool, and different personality and perspective. Looking at his stuff, like anyone, you'll be like, oh my god, he's so goddamn good. Like, am I ever even gonna be able to be good like that? Like, ever? Like, But then after a while, as you're looking at that, you're like, yes, he is better at being Peter Hahn and the specific things that he does, like teaching dynamic sketching and this whole like style of how to do these things. I was watching a video where he just like does a bunch of the shapes, and he does them with felt tip pen, so it's one strike for each line. There's no scribbling. Yeah. And he does them in a couple minutes just perfectly, just about as quick as you can go. And then he draws like a stag beetle in construction, and he goes through construction and gesture, which I'm like, yo, this guy's talking about it too, but like fucking immaculately. And then he draws the stag beetle again with only one line without lifting his pen up off the page, and he does it within 1 minute, and it's just like a work of art. I'm like, oh my god, Peter Hahn. Oh, jeez. He does this while explaining like the utility and value and giving examples of these different classic historical artists. And he's really, really, really impressive. And sometimes it can be discouraging. But then you come back to the stuff you've got and you're like, oh, this character and the story that I imagined for her in her world. Like, I'm about that. I'm going back to the our story, the chained demon mistress, which is just some late night, like coming up with designs, having fun with it, and creating a story and a world. Like, the character creates a gateway into this story, and that story takes place within this world. And we started making it expansive and like just getting into the fun of building it from there. Like, that was so fun and so cool. I'm like, we all bring unique skill sets to the table. And when you can take it out of like being in competition with Peter Hahn or trying to be Peter Hahn, instead I'm like, nah, I am myself. And there's so much you can learn from him. Like, when you take that aspect out of it, like just looking at his technique and, as he explains his technique and demonstrates it often at the same time, my sketches leveled up in like a short period. Like, I could have sat there and done the same practice that I was already doing for a longer amount of time. Or sometimes when someone gives you the right advice, the right demonstration, gives you a little bit of motivation, you level up very quickly. His demonstration, it's on the Proco channel, but I don't know if it's a Lightbox. It's from 1 year ago, and he's talking about wanting to get movement into the art space. He talks about it being something that's uncomfortable, unfamiliar, scary for him. And I'm like, show, man, you scared of like art, man? You art scared of you, Peter Hahn. But no, he's just very honest, and it's captivating to watch him do it. There's a point where he draws it, very, very good figure doing a pitch, and then changes the perspective again, makes it more dynamic, and then he just like does it really, really quickly and intuitively. Like, he says that he's setting down all of his theory and the formula and just like letting the rhythm and momentum, letting his arm move. He's being intuitive while talking about being intuitive. And again, it's about 1 minute that he takes to do the drawing, and it's so good. The hand on it, the movement, I'm like, God damn, like 1 minute. Clearly, he gave the example of doing the form, learning it again, learning it again. Oh yeah, just that had me thinking, for each thing that I draw, to draw it again and again, and to, you know, do it slowly, figure it out, do all of the work to figure it out. Like, where is what, where are they hooking together, where are the changes in angle, and then do it quickly, and then do it quicker, do it like simplified, and you can usually get it down to like reducing your time until you're making it kind of reflex. And we're going to do a video of that where we've done like 1 or 2 drawings of all of these things. I'll just come back in. Let's look at the thing and then give example of doing exactly what I'm talking about, where then you recreate it and you draw it again. And that, I think, would be the most helpful reference in a way, because it's fun to look at someone that's already completed a drawing. You know, as I'm watching the Peter Han sketchbook tour, or the Kim Jong-gi sketchbook tour. I should watch some Eliza Ivanova. Is that her name? Oh yeah, Peter Han's like, Eliza is maybe the best draftsman in the world. God damn. That's huge. And everyone, like Ahmed Al-Douri is like Eliza Ivanova. She's like everyone. And just check out her work. I have looked at Eliza quite a bit, but not in a while. Her, like, the stylishness, realisticness versus, you know, is she simplifying things, making them cartoony, like letting the shapes just take on a kind of abstract, beautiful puzzle piece kind of stained glass sort of effect. It's so good. It's so good. And we're going to do a video of that here just shortly, where I've already gotten some things drawn, but then I'll look at them again, talk about what I learned from drawing it, and break it down into the simple building block shapes and recreate them. And through that process, we make an effective video, and also I learn the things better. And not only do we give an example of drawing all these things, but of drawing them twice. And as you draw them and then draw them again, you learn them better and better, so that all these kind of things, the series that we're doing, and just like ideas that I have for lessons and programs and things, we're trying to gear into ways that you can get EXP boosts. Things like creating a story, and then like what are the characters and environments that you need for the story, so that you can learn like action and movement forwards in a world, while you're also doing in-depth a few characters that you learn really, really well. A couple like side characters, and there's like guards, townspeople, a couple locations, like even if just doing 1 chapter of manga. And then imagining maybe 1 chapter of manga in a world that could be adapted to games. So we're tying like game mechanics, storytelling, like emotion, and creating interesting characters, like the art style of one place, maybe linking up to the art style of a different place, how you draw figures in perspective in relation to one another. And we're just touching on these things briefly so that you could take that introduction to all these different things, and any area that you were most interested in, you could hone in on. If you're thinking of something like that, like also, you know, you could take your main characters and just do really beautiful portraits of them, like flowers behind them, like Yue, like Y_U_E on Instagram. Yue is such a good, I'm pretty sure Yue is a girl, but I'm not 100. She is so good. She's got like watercolor and ink type, like just the most beautiful portraits of oftentimes girls, sometimes not, with like flowers and petals, and then Japanese painting meets this just immaculately delicate portrait. You see some examples of her drawing also like digital art, really, really good. Of like, I don't know, like Marvel Rivals characters or something, like modern, on the beat, like keeping up with concept design and still specifying into such a lovely aspect of design that I think elevates, I don't know, like the whole industry. If you're looking at a whole bunch of game concept artwork, if you go to the amazing art and design board that I have on Pinterest, and you look at all of that cool stuff, all that cool concept design, you're breaking characters and worlds, and then look at some UA, and it's a nice breath of fresh air. It's a nice moment, that you can appreciate something a bit more subtle, you know? And there's all kinds of things that do that. Sorry, I'm kind of just like, I've been working on this stuff all day long, so I'm decompressing a little bit, and I don't mean to go on and on and on. It's a good flow, though. It's a good flow. It's been fun going through and sketching some of the concept art from Final Fantasy VIII. The concept art specifically is really, really good. I love the way they define forms and muscles. It's keen. If you do that, and then to look at the game models, which, there's a gallery of all the concept artwork of Final Fantasy VIII. It's great. There's also an enemy list of every enemy in that game. So you can see from that blueprint where they capture everything, and then how is that blueprint adapted to the game engine? They have to simplify. They're working with technology, to make it and render it part of the game. And then you, as a designer, can then like add those muscles and details back in as best you can, and then you can change the angle of things. It's nice to have a simplified polygon build of your enemies there. It would be really fun. Yes, obviously it'd be really fun to go through and do Final Fantasy VII, where you concept art and then the in-game models and the difference between them. But then you look at Remake and how they brought it to life there. That'd be cool. It'd be valuable. We'd like to do that with Final Fantasy VIII and do what does a remake of Final Fantasy VIII look like, and to try even and imagine the storytelling, where you're like trying to think of it, like, why are these guys wearing only light clothes in this like mercenary conflict? Obviously it's so that it looks cool, but also like, they are using the Guardian forces, and the Guardian forces give them kind of superpowers or superhuman abilities. Their strength, their stamina, their endurance is augmented. So you could have them running around really fucking quickly and doing like super strength type stuff because they have the magic allotted through the Guardian force to give them. So they're kind of like superheroes within this world. And you have stuff like there's a barrier spell. Well, you can be like, maybe, if there's people with machine guns on them, use a barrier spell while you're running, so it looks cool. Can you imagine they don't just like catch a stray bullet, but it just bounces off because of their endurance, with cinematic liberties everywhere. If they're quick, they have magic, their reflexes are really good, right? So it's like if guys with machine guns there, you can, cast a fireball or a lightning bolt or like an ice blast at them. And they have to jump out of the way. And in the time that they jump out of the way, you jump upon them with a physical attack or follow up with magic or something. So it look cool. And like, you can just, get into the game mythology of like, why don't they just pack guns? So it's like, because guns don't do as much damage, and the, armor on these things, the like stamina and endurance on these monsters, their skin's incredibly thick, their muscles hardened, they're ferocious ass beasts. And think of like Invincible. Invincible is a kind of good modern superheroes and stuff, but the way they fight the kaijus and all these things, and it's like normal humans can't even take those things at all. The superheroes are an entire different level and tier. It'd be fun to do that with Final Fantasy VIII. I mean, you don't have to make it Afro Samurai. Obviously, I'm always like, oh shit, that look crazy as Afro Samurai. Squall come in and he kills someone with the gun blade. That ain't gonna be clean. That could be have an arm go flying. So, in just like to be as respectful as possible to the original designers and creators of the game, but you have it a bit darker and more violent for sure. It's still like a light M rating kind of a deal, You don't have to have someone like, yeah, splitting someone's head in half like vertically, you know? Um, and then horizontally, so the two halves of the head explode and go flying in different directions. One half of the head gets like stuck on the wall. Kind of. It's insane. Um, so yeah, it's fun. When you get into any kind of creative parts of games, learn how it all fits together. You don't have to learn everything. You just get an idea how all the different pieces of game design fit together and how it's adapted from an idea, and then how it's remixing the past and changing it when they're trying to do new things no one's ever done before. But how do you articulate those new things so that it fits in with an audience, so that it fits in with other designers, artists, musicians? It's got to have some point of reference so that we can engage with it. What are those points of reference? How do you set it up? How do you build something new? What are interesting ways to remix existing things? Right? I'm always trying to think of a Castlevania remix. Castlevania, Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest may not have been the game that I played the most, but it was my favorite game when I was a little kid. The NES was the first system I had, and that game was like a game that introduced me to many gameplay mechanics, like we were talking about earlier. Whatever was your formative experience, whatever was your introduction to a thing, whatever that gateway was, it becomes special to you. It becomes special to you because that was the gate that got you into games and that expanded the world of games in any number of these different directions. But this is the only game of the day-night cycle, the only game that had puzzles that they didn't give you any of the clues for. There was like mysteries in the game that led nowhere oftentimes, but the idea of a world that had mysteries in it, of like leveling up and action. It was the first action RPG I ever played. All these things, but stylistically, gothic, haunting, and yet games. The blocky, pixel perfect pieces of game design. Like it wasn't really a Transylvanian world. It kind of was in a way, but it was like architecture of game design and just getting immersed in that space where it's like, where exactly does your hitbox land? You kind of hyper focus in on it. And, way later, you're playing Overwatch, you're playing Devil May Cry, you're playing Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and you're thinking way back to getting to play Ocarina of Time back in the day. Metal Gear Solid, like where exactly are your hitboxes? Where exactly is that timing? Figuring things out and then going in and watching pro speedrunners do it. And you're like, there's such an expansive amount of, perfectionism you can apply yourself to within that space. Really fucking cool. Okay, so we're getting into game design. We're thinking of a new smartphone Digimon game. It's our Digimon game. We're trying to adapt it, like make new IP out of it, which is just, it's hard sometimes. We're going to get over this as we make a presentation for this as a new IP. I think the Digimon mythos in the world, of course, it fits super, super good. So it's going to be Digimon to me. But you want to think of whatever world, whatever approach, technique is going to be best for the game. It's going to be best for the players. It's also going to be best for the designers, but for the game, for the players, for the world. And that's the game that you want to make. So if it's a new IP, we'll still kind of keep the wild kind of a dream that it could be based on the Digimon mythos and unofficially, like as we talk, lots of ideas for how you can do that. Some ideas, okay, have a team of at least two, three, yeah, 3v3. Awesome. And then you work collaboratively with other players doing team battles and team events, or like fighting against other players. So competitive RPG, like active turn-based, like turn-based with ATB, and you build your own custom teams. You're skill ranked into different things. You have strategies. I've never seen that. I've never seen that before. That's amazing. The idea of being able to work with a team of other players, so it's usually 3v3, but each of you only controls one of the creatures, and you're fighting against a different team of three players, each of them controlling their one teacher. You have to be synchronized so much and to have a well ironed out strategy, and you don't know what the other player is going to do. So there's a good amount of guessing. What are they going to do? What's their strategy? And implementing counter strategies instantly. But being able to rely on and be like different fingers of the same hand, different hands of the same body with your teammates who are going to be casting buffs, they're going to be healing you or attacking special moves, and you have to like, read each other's movements to like, and doing that at like a high level would be endlessly a blast. That would be so cool to like how you do the progression in the game. If it's just based on wherever the hell you're at, it's like how do you start fighting weaker monsters and like tier up in maybe a beating the gym leader type expansion. But you know, you play the game wherever you are, and it's made to be very long and big and endlessly playable, to integrate at every space the Tamagotchi element and try to create something that is a stress relieving space, that is fun, energetic, you know, something that creates a positive energy while creating a fun, addictive, playable, successful, awesome game. So how you do both of those things at once, all these things, you know, like already it's a really good idea for a thing. I'm kind of just thinking like, whoa, like even way back in the day. I mean, I'm talking like, you know, 2003, 2002, thinking like when someone does the Final Fantasy engine with Pokemon, that's gonna take over the world. He's a little ass kid, and literally still, so much, so much. Um, but what can you do with modern smartphone games as well? That makes them playable, that makes them likable, that makes them easy to pick up and easy to understand, and yet have a lot of depth where you play them endlessly. Yeah. What are things that are timeless in terms of like gameplay mechanics, sounds, like gameplay loops, in terms of graphical things? What are graphical things that are timeless? How you can integrate real world elements. Um, and yeah, I've got a lot of, you know, potential ideas and ironing that out to something that almost definitely, no matter what angle you took, no matter what team was doing it, would be a good move. There's always a good place that you can get to on your gameplay innovation and trying to work it to that point. Yeah, how do the Tamagotchi things work? Is there a sequence of mini games that you can use to level up different attributes and statistics to get the, you know, your energy back for your monsters, your mons? Is there ways like, you know, you probably Tamagotchi with a couple of them as your main bonded, you know, Digimon thing, you know? And then maybe a transition, but that first one, you know, like Pokemon or something, the first one you make a bond with, and then you train others. But maybe like if you have a bunch of them, some of them you can have, you know, like a place like a, you know, Pokemon Center esque thing where you can have them trained. But some of them you also train them personally, you know, and you're there, you spend time with them. And if you're having them trained by the center, it wouldn't do it as effectively. But so that you could spend your time with your key Tamagotchis, you know, and spend time with them, you know, like for going on walks, you know, you could actually have a step counter where it would encourage you to get out and go on a walk in a safe place. You'd always be safe. Um, And you'd actually, yeah, be going on walks with your, your creatures and all kinds of different things. Button pressing mini games. You want to find elemental mini games, things that would not get old. You know, they wouldn't all have to be mini games. There's also just like you'd spend time together doing things. Just think of like swiping and playing and petting the thing, you increase your bond with them. Feed them when you don't let your Tamagotchi die. Yeah, and how you can make that as immersive and and stress relieving and positive, but to have it be like depth and simplicity, right? You want to think about what was cool about the Tamagotchi and how can you bring those things to life, and then use as much of technology and design as possible to make it like not get old, but keep those elemental things about the Tamagotchi experience in the engine. So it's very like nostalgic and retro. Like, well, I've forgotten about this. Like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. There's so many things where it's like, that's like, there are points in Breath of the Wild that remind me of NES Zelda, of the open world aspect and like finding hidden things and the blocky shape of some of the things in the Guardians. I'm like, what? They're bringing the retroness all the way back, but integrating it. So many things that are totally modern. And that fusion of what is good and what is old, and then bringing it into the present moment and making it real and making it alive was the feeling I'd use to describe that as just magic. The magic of game design. Think of ways that you could do that in this immersive engine. And if you really got the turn-based RPG elements to hit and slap, and like they're fun and addictive and just the best of, turn-based RPG elements, like the way Final Fantasy VII moves and hits so hard, like every attack matters. When you hit with a powerful attack, it's like unexpected and powerful. The momentum and movement there is really good. But you look at other alternative ways, the Persona series, the Dragon Age series, like not just Final Fantasy, even if you use that as your baseline. Different elements of RPGs so that it's fun. You want to get your guys back out there. You want to be continuing to make progress, but then they will run out of all of their energy, and maybe you can there's going to be microtransactions in it. Microtransactions are going to be a big part of it, but like not too much where it's like instantly it buys you into doing another microtransaction. You have to pay at least $1 a day, or like we'll just like have wait time or something. But to have a gacha, okay, here, we'll do this in the next video. I've got a whole like maybe 15 more minutes of ideas for this. And I'll just come back and make a video specifically about our modern Tamagotchi Digimon future, Digimon world, Digimon Heroes. A new modern creature collection game. Think of what aspects of the game world will take place in a game world. What aspects of the game world have graphics that bring them to life? I like to think that you wouldn't cheap out, and we would try to use a world-class arts production team to make environments, make characters, make an avatar. The characters, the world changes depending on where you are in real life, what time it is. So it's immersive yet a gateway to another world, the digital world. But we're creating our own digital world, the coolest one possible. Yeah, definitely no billion-dollar game, but like billions, like multi-billion dollars. And that's not the game that I imagine. That's the game that we imagine. That's me dreaming of the radical collaboration. That's me dreaming of a world-class arts production company and the UI that they create, the UI, the feedback loop of the game, of reward and challenge and like skill building and progress as you gain more affluence, gain more proficiency with the systems of the game, and it becomes something hardwired to you. It becomes something that you know how to do it really well, and then you're getting better at it. Okay, so we'll come back to this. I gotta take care of my Tamagotchi, my Sanji cat, my real life animal. And I'm sending you my love and light. What's that? Ideas for creatures. All right. Peace and love.